Hello and welcome to the lab portion of my Arista EOS course. So today we're going to be talking about A-boot. So A-boot is similar to Cisco's ROM-on mode, which will allow us to do a password recovery, which will allow us to delete any files in our flash or modify maybe if we have an issue booting, we have the wrong version of EOS or something like that. We can jump into A-boot and we can fix it there. So in just a second here, it'll say press Control C to enter A-boot mode. So we're in A-boot mode now. So the one benefit really to A-boot as opposed to something like Cisco's ROM-on mode is it's actually Linux. So it's running a really slim version of Linux, but you'll see a lot of these familiar commands like ls, cd, vi, right? We can actually boot into an image if we want. We can reboot the switch and a couple of other things here as well. So if we want to get FTP or SSH, we can get some files, maybe an EOS image or something like that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into my flash. Now this is a Linux directory, not like we're used to on Cisco, everything's flash. It's actually mount and then flash. So if you're familiar with Linux, it's pretty simple, self-explanatory. If you're not, it might be a little bit of a learning curve. We can actually do an ls here and we can see what kind of files we have. So we have a startup config, right? I just created that. This is a brand new lab switch. So we've got VEOS, the actual EOS image right there. We've got a zero touch config. We've got a boot config here, which tells us which EOS image to grab, which there's only one in this case, but we have that. So we have all those things available. Well, what if we were in A-boot because we lost a password or for some reason did a typo when we set the password on the switch? We could do something like MK, which is going to be, no, not MK, MV, excuse me, MV, which is going to move startup config, and we're just going to call it startup config.old. And now we'll do an ls, and you'll see here that now there is no startup config, there is a startup config.old. And of course, we don't actually want that. I want it to, I want that startup config to be my startup config. So I'm going to actually do the opposite back here so that I can continue with the lab. And I'm actually going to, I may have to specify the image. Device or resource busy. Oh, okay, so I can't quite do that. So I may have to just reboot here. And we'll see how VirtualBox responds. So VirtualBox is giving me some issues. I downloaded the VMDK from Arista's website to do a lab switch and just fired it up. It gave me a little bit of couple quirks here and there, but especially with rebooting, it doesn't like the switch rebooting on its own. But other than that, it's been pretty good. So it'll take a minute to load here, and we'll talk about a couple of the commands that we're able to manage our boot and configuration from EOS itself. So we've got our switch booted up here, and we're going to go into configuration mode. And there's really just two commands I wanna share with you guys here. So there's the boot system command, which if you're familiar with Cisco, you should know what it is, right? We're going to actually be able to configure what I want to say iOS, EOS version we want from here. Now the cool thing about this that Cisco doesn't have is it actually has context sensitive help for things in our flash. So we can see here, we can look here, we've got a startup config. Of course we don't want that, we have a boot config. Well, somewhere in here we have this vos.swi, and we can actually use the help system to get to where we want. Not only that, but we can use tab to complete. one of my favorite features of EOS, you can use tab to complete on named objects. Really, really awesome. So we're going to set that. Image does not support next image compatibility checks. So it's a lab image. There's not something to be concerned about in this case. But there are some warnings and stuff. And of course, checks and balances and all that good stuff to make sure everything's working. The other command, I think there's boot console. So we can actually set the console speed if we want through here. Now, typically you'd see 9600, right? But you could actually set your console speed to something different via the EOS CLI. You could also set a boot secret. So if we want to have an encrypted password, now if you set this password in a boot itself, which you can, then it will not be encrypted. However, we can encrypt it with SHA-512 encryption here, which is an awesome encryption standard for this, so that we can get everything encrypted and nice and good. So, of course, I can demonstrate that for you, and I will do SHA-512, and well, actually, I'm just going to type in Arista, and then don't think that will be in our running config, but it should be if I go into shell. So this is actually in here. Oh, bash. There we go. So this is actually a Linux shell that we're in now. So I can cd to mnt flash, the same directory we were in before in aboot. And I can do dir here, and I can actually cat our boot config. And you'll see here, if I can follow my mouse here, that our password here is actually encrypted. Now, if you're used to Cisco, you're used to like an encrypted password that's like this long. So way better than Cisco's implementation of something like this. And you'll see here that we also have the configuration for the EOS version right there as well. So that's it for aboot. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next video.